dear students, as you walk through the subject of pharmaceutical jurisprudence, you have come to the conclusion of the same. During the course of your journey, you have learnt about various rules, regulations, acts and codes that are applicable in the pharmaceutical industry. In today's lecture, we are going to look at the Indian Penal Code and the Code of Criminal Procedures. Now, what these are applicable for is whenever any offence is committed under any rule or under any act, what is the further process? What process is involved in prosecution of the offender? And that is what we are going to look at in this lecture. So for this purpose, I, Dr. Smita Nayak, Professor and HOD, Department of Pharmaceutics, is going to take you through my presentation on the Indian Penal Code and the Code of Criminal Procedures. So let us move forward. As you can see, the Indian Penal Code was established in 1860 and it came into force from 1st of January 1862. The Indian Penal Code extends to the whole of India and it is the highest law in the land. Okay. The general objective, the general purpose of laying down this code was to provide a general penal code for the whole country. And the provisions of this code extend to Indian citizens committing offences within India, offences committed by Indian citizens outside India, as well as offences committed on ships and aircrafts that are registered in India. Under this penal code, every person shall be liable to punishment for every act or omission that is contrary to the provisions for which he is found guilty within the country. So any citizen of India or any foreigner from outside India, if he does not follow the rules and regulations of the land and he is found to be guilty, then he is penalized, he or she is penalized under the Indian Penal Code of 1860. Even a foreigner who enters the Indian territory has to submit himself or herself to the operation of the Indian laws, and he or she cannot be allowed to plead that he or she did not know that wrong was being done and the act is not an offense in their own country. So foreigner cannot give an excuse that what act he has performed is not an offense in his own country and therefore he cannot be penalized, right? So what is this IPC and what are its contents? The IPC 1860 consists of 23 chapters. The first chapter gives an introduction to the various concepts. Chapter 2 gives very broad and general explanations about the offences. Chapter 3 gives a list of punishments that can be given for the offences. Chapter 4 gives the general exceptions to these punishments. And chapter 5 discusses the offences and the abatement of these offences. So if somebody helps in committing an offence, is it an offence and what is the punishment? And chapters 6 to 23 give the list of offences under the various titles. So if you were to go through IPC, once again I am telling you it has 23 chapters. A broad overview is it discusses the different offences, the different punishments as well as exceptions, that is individuals or organizations which do not fall under these offences and punishments. So, in summary, the Indian Penal Code discusses offences and punishments. It is the highest law of the land and it is applicable to all citizens of India, either in India or even when they go abroad and commit some offence. It is also applicable to foreigners who come to India and do not follow the law of the land. Now, we know, it can be identified as to what is an offence committed, what is the punishment, but what about the execution? Who is going to execute the punishment? Who is going to process the offense further. For this purpose, the Code of Criminal Procedure was laid down in 1973. This is an act to consolidate and amend law relating to any criminal procedure. Now, all offences that are committed under the Indian Penal Code shall be investigated, inquired into, tried and dealt with according to the provisions that are given under the Code of Criminal Procedure. Let us see what are the provisions given under this. As this is a very short topic in the syllabus, what we are going to do is we are going to take an overview of the Code of Criminal Procedure, and the most important part of Code of Criminal Procedure is the various definitions. We need to understand the various concepts and the various steps and procedures that are taken under this criminal procedure, for which purpose we start with the definition. Now, all of us have heard the term offense. What is the legal definition of offense? Any act or omission that is made punishable by law, that is for the time being in force, is called an offense. So anything that is contrary to the law of the land, whether it is some act that is performed or some act that is not performed, but punishable by law, is called as an offense. What is the case? A proceeding for prosecution of a person who is alleged to have committed an offense. So whenever a person commits an offense, whatever are the proceedings for prosecution of that person is called as a case. So when a person has committed an offense, a case is filed against him. And such a case or such a proceeding must result in either discharge, conviction or acquittal. So discharge means the case is discharged, the case doesn't exist. Conviction means the person is prosecuted, or acquittal means the person is declared as innocent. Next, we are going to look at the different types of offences. We are going to classify the offences. The offences can be classified as cognizable and non-cognizable offences, bailable and non-bailable offences, compoundable and non-compoundable offences, as well as warrant cases and summons cases. And we are going to look at all these terminologies in the upcoming slides. So once again, classification of offences is as cognizable, non-cognizable offence, bailable, non-bailable offence, compoundable and non-compoundable offence, and there is something called as warrant cases and summons cases. Moving forward, cognizable offense. Now you remember the definition of offense, right? So an offense for which a police officer may arrest without warrant and can investigate without any order or direction of the magistrate, such an offense is called as a cognizable offense. Whereas a non-cognizable offense is one for which there cannot be any arrest without a warrant and there cannot be any investigation without the orders of the magistrate. Next, we come to what is known as a bailable offense and a non-bailable offense. So what is a bailable offense? An offense wherein bail is granted as a matter of course by the police officer or by the court. And a non-bailable offense is a reverse. Here the offense wherein bail is granted only at the discretion of the court or the authorities. Okay, so bail has to be applied for, there will be a hearing and then bail will be granted. So you have a bailable offense and a non-bailable offense. Next, compoundable and non-compoundable offense. An offense wherein the accused enters into an agreement with the victim to pay some gratification or consideration for not prosecuting the accused. So where there is a dispute, let us say some materialistic dispute like property dispute, and both the parties who are accusing each other reach an agreement, then such a type of offense is called as a compoundable offense. So there is an agreement between the accused and the victim, and they both fulfill each other's demands and withdraw the case. Such an offense is called as a compoundable offense. The reverse of that is a non-compoundable offense, where the offense cannot be compounded, or a compromise or an agreement cannot be reached. Next, a warrant case. A case that is relating to an offense punishable with either death, imprisonment for life, or imprisonment for a term that is exceeds 2 years. Okay, so a case wherein the accused is may be subjected to death or imprisonment for 2 years or imprisonment for life, such a case is called as a warrant case. And a summons case is one which is not a warrant case. So all others where minor punishment is expected are called as a summons case. What is investigation? An investigation includes all the proceedings under the code for collection of evidence, and it is conducted by a police officer or any other person who is authorized by a magistrate in this behalf. So whenever an offense is committed and a case is filed, investigation needs to be carried out. Such an investigation is carried out by a police officer or by any other person who is authorized by a magistrate, and the purpose of this investigation is to collect evidence for prosecution of the accused. What is an inquiry? Every inquiry other than trial that is conducted by a magistrate or court is called as an inquiry. It is never conducted by the police, and the purpose of this inquiry is to determine the truth or falsity of certain facts. It is nothing but a judicial proceeding, and an oath can be administered to the persons who are standing and answering the query. Now, this is something you're familiar with in lots of movies. Trial. It is a judicial process in accordance with law, where the question of guilt or innocence of the person who is supposed to have committed the offense is determined. So after investigation, after inquiry, the person stands before the judicial court and undergoes a trial. So the judicial process is carried out in accordance with law, and the question of guilt or innocence of the accused person is established. So once the person has been convicted of a particular crime, he is handed over to the custody. What does custody mean? Custody denotes surveillance or restriction on the movement of a person. Now, sometimes you have arrest where the person is sent to jail. Sometimes a person is sent to custody. Sometimes a person is put under house arrest. So, in either of these cases, there is restriction on the movement of the person. When the restriction is complete, a person is sent to jail. It is called as arrest. Sometimes this custody may be partial. So, person is banned from leaving the city, person is restricted from leaving the country, etc. So, you have arrest or you have partial custody. What is arrest? By law, arrest is restraining of the liberty of a person in order to compel obedience to the order of the court. So, where the court has ordered arrest of a person, there he is completely restrained. And the purpose of such an arrest is to prevent the commission of a crime or ensure that the person who is charged of the crime is going to answer the questions related to that crime. So, person is placed in jail, he or she is arrested in compliance to the orders of the court to prevent the person from committing a crime, or to ensure that the person is going to answer the questions related to the crime that was committed earlier. Such an arrest can be done with warrant or without warrant. In case of non-cognizable offences, generally arrest is done with the help of a warrant. So in case of minor crimes, warrant is required for arrest. Where the crime is serious, leading to a death sentence or life imprisonment, in such cases, arrest can be done without warrant. In case of non-cognizable offences, in case of cognizable offences, where a non-cognizable offence has been committed in the presence of a police officer and the accused refuses to reveal his identity, he or she can be arrested without a warrant. In case of designing to commit a cognizable offence which otherwise cannot be prevented also, arrest can be carried out without a warrant. So there are cases where arrest can be done without warrant, and in non-cognizable offences, minor offences, arrest for the arrest purpose of arrest, a warrant is required. So when arrest has to be done, what are the powers that are imparted to the judicial person to carry out this? That is what we are going to see now. Whenever a police inspector is given a warrant or has to arrest without warrant, he or she is authorized with power to use reasonable force, power to search for the accused, power to pursue the accused into any place in India. So you have police teams going from one state to another simply for arresting a person because they have the judicial powers to do so. Power to obtain the assistance of any person. They have the power to direct a subordinate officer to effect the arrest. So if one police officer is in one location and he comes to know that crime is conducted in another location, he can direct his subordinate who is there at that location to arrest. Power to rearrest, also power to rearrest person who has escaped from custody. So these are the various powers that are conferred onto the police officials or other suitably authorized personnel to carry out arrest. What is the procedure? Once arrest is done, what next? The police, let us say the police team has arrested a person who is found guilty and accused, and they decide to take him away and present him either before a court or to put him in jail. But there are certain steps that they need to carry out before they do this. So first of all, they have to give information regarding the arrest and place of arrest to the person who is nominated by the accused. They have to search the accused, the arrested person, and place all the articles found upon him in safe custody and give him a memo for the same so that he can recover his items when he is released from jail. Seize weapons, if any, that are found on the arrested person and forward it to the court. Carry out medical examination of the arrested person if found necessary. Next, send a report of the arrest immediately to the district magistrate. No one can be detained illegally. And detain the arrested person until and unless either a bond or bail or magistrate orders are received by them. So this is the general procedure after arrest. Okay, so with this we have briefly looked into the Indian Penal Code, which is the highest law of the land and applicable to all citizens. Indian citizens in India, Indian citizens abroad, as well as foreigners on Indian soil. If they don't follow the law of the land and they are found guilty of committing the offences that are listed in the Indian Penal Code 1860, then they need to be penalized. The procedure for penalization is through the Code of Criminal Procedures, which was laid down in 1973. And under this, the very first thing is the various concepts, the terminologies that have to be used. So right from inquiry to arrest to bail to the various types of offences, whether it is cognizable, non-cognizable, bailable, non-bailable, warrant, summons. The different terminologies are defined, and this procedure gives the law of the land, or rather the magistrate and the police, the power to summon a person, to arrest a person, to put him in jail, to restrict his movements. So these are the various laws of the land and the procedures that you need to know today in brief. And tomorrow, as professionals, you need to know more and more about the different laws governing the safety and security of the Indian citizens. So as responsible Indian citizens, it is your duty to know about these various procedures, to comply with the law of the land at all times, and to ensure that you do not threaten the safety and the health of the citizen of India as responsible pharmacists, and take care and prevent all such untoward incidents where you need to approach the law of the land and where you may be prosecuted. So have a safe day. Thank you.